Hello, good evening, and welcome back to Sunday Night Breakdown. We've made it to season six somehow or other. It was a close run thing in our extensive negotiations that ran to at least seven text messages back and forth between me and Dave. The first one back from Dave was there wasn't much to talk about. It's been a quiet summer, Dave.
This is where I have a bit of an issue because I have to think how much can people listen to. Um,
So
yeah,
here's the thing, because the fixture schedule has been quite
right. So we got something
kind
there.
to us. So we could have a few minutes.
Yeah.
Where I'll let you start, Dave. Where do you want to start? You can start with the women's rather tame exit from Eurobasket. The men almost as tame, but saved themselves in the last game. SLB, BBF, High Court,
Yeah, I think we'll
referees,
start. I think
all
we'll
of the
start with
above.
politics because the politics is underpins everything else.
Mm,
If that
mhm,
makes any sense. Um, we're in a impossible situation whereby the governing, like the governing body of the sport the body that is charged with the overall promotion of the sport in the UK or in Great Britain anyway, um, has taken the position that we don't need to have professional basketball for 2 years.
mm,
That for all the ups and downs and legal machinations and everything that's gone on,
mm.
where we're at at the middle of September is that we've been told that there's been a license given to a individual that we know about. We've talked about before. We'll not go into that. He has indicated that he won't be starting until 2027 when the NBA starts. Of course, the
Mm.
NBA then come out a day later and say we're probably not going to be starting 2028.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, for reasons which are, I'm afraid, utterly beyond me, other than on its kindest level, petty politics, um, we don't have recognition of the professional league,
Yeah.
which basically means that the governing body does not want the professional league to take place, which basically means that the 12 or so thousand people who go to games every week across the country, um, if it were the British Basketball Federation alone in control of this, we wouldn't have games to watch.
See, I actually think it's bigger than that because
That's a starting point.
yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I always try and frame it. You and I have been invested in British basketball for longer than we care to admit to, but I think both our greys give it away. But it's that
I agree
thing.
when I was 18, Dan. Sorry.
It's that thing is I sort of look at it and go, okay, let's try and take any biases or any leanings that you and I may have. What is the end goal? And as you say, the 2027 is probably optimistic if we're being kind, and was
Yeah,
probably just a number plucked out of the air in the first place.
there's been a
But
few of them.
in order to get to that, you're going to need some teams. And it's been said that you're going to need the existing teams
Yeah,
in order to get to 10. Now, obviously, you can drop a Man City and an Arsenal or Tottenham or whoever if you go to NBA Europe and just create teams from there. That isn't a problem per se, but they're going to have to play somebody else if you're going to have a domestic league. And the logic would be you'd play where there's always been basketball because there's already a fan base and there's already an existence.
and
But
that logic is accepted
yeah, 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 yeah,
by
yeah,
everybody.
by everybody.
Yeah,
But in order to get there, as you say, if you're not going to allow the existing league to run, I mean, they've ignored you anyway. But if you're not going to allow it, what in essence, if the let's say the SLB decided, well, we haven't got recognition, so we're not going to play any games, and we'll wait 2 years. What would essentially happen is you would tank the entire basketball economy.
yeah.
Literally hundreds of people who are currently employed at the nine Super League basketball clubs, and I include in that the sort of foundations, etc., which have the community coaches and all of that, would essentially cease to exist. You would make your national team head coach unemployed.
Yeah.
You would make, how many GB players have we got in the league this year? Three, is it? I think it's three we've got who played in Eurobasket in the summer, who are playing in Super League this year. They would all use.
Tariq, Adamu, and Ward Hibbert.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think, yeah. So you would make them employed. Obviously, the whole Dan Clark thing, you would take his business away. So these are people directly involved in your organization, and obviously all the others. And when you finally come round to 27 or 28 and you want to play, you presumably will want to play in the best arenas about. And uh, yeah, there are other places. There's whatever the Telly West is called in Newcastle, and there's the
That's not feasible.
whatever
I was
whatever
there
the
to watch Peter Kay. That'll run Peter Kay. That won't run. That is just not feasible anymore in our world, I'm afraid.
uh, uh, uh,
Yeah.
and you've got Thingy Live, Co-op Live, and whatever the MEN is called these days, and you've got whatever the Sheffield one
You've got Greg's
it's called
passing
these
flying
days.
through the air,
Yeah,
high in the
but
sky. Yeah.
you've so if you don't use those, you would have to use Virtue Motors, Mattioli, Canon Medical, PlaySport as your venues. But the question would be is if you stopped playing basketball now, A, would they continue? Yes, they probably would. But then what would be the incentive for them to go back to having basketball as an anchor tenant when they would spend 3 years finding other things to make it work, to make the finances work, and not to mention the difficulty that's taken, as you and I know, to build those venues over the years, and it all goes to under what premise is essentially tanking everything for 2 years or 3 years a good idea. And then you've got the thing with the referees, and I know there's more to the referees than just what's been reported in terms of them, the FIBA referees being told that they risk doing FIBA games.
Expulsion from
Yeah,
the Andorra. Yeah.
and it's whether that comes from our federation or FIBA, it almost doesn't matter. Whichever one of them have said that, assuming that they have, is therefore taking more money out of the economy because our elite referees wouldn't be able to referee. And it's just like, where does it? There is no logic to tanking everything for.
But here's where I think. Well, I'm going to try and give you a little bit of logic as to where I think, and just so people understand. Again, we talk. I'm sure we haven't got that many new listeners in year six, but anybody who is new, this is opinion. There's generally a basis of background knowledge, of experience, of lived experience, little bit of current knowledge. Okay, we both have links to clubs, and anything that I know from a certain source, I will disclose. Okay, whatever.
But go out and read the Yorkshire Post. It's all in the Yorkshire Post.
So
Yeah,
basically,
yeah.
the vast majority of this stuff comes from what is publicly out there. Okay. And here's where we are at. And the timeline, unfortunately, of the whole debacle, it starts in January when the BBF award a right to a franchise to Marshall Glickman and his band of merry men.
To a license rather than a franchise.
Right to a license, sorry, to Marshall Glickman. And the reality is, at this point, it's quite clear from the subsequent stuff that's been in the press and the comments that have come out, that at this point, Chris Grant, who is the head of BBF, and anybody else who on their board may or may not have been interested, was entirely unaware that they did not have the power to award an exclusive license. Right, because you've seen the stuff coming in and out, right? And logically, if you're Marshall Glickman, are you going to be putting up £15 million for a non-exclusive license on British basketball? Are you? No, you're not. Right? So basically, they gave away or they sold something that they didn't have the right to sell, and they no doubt promised Glickman that they did. That then causes an issue when the SLB, and this is thanks to the Yorkshire Evening Post primarily, the SLB and a couple of statements the SLB have made basically say, look, we don't have to have a license, we just have to have a recognition. Right? And in fact, if you're not going to give us recognition, you're breaching competition law. Okay?
And in fact, in FIBA rules, there's no mention of a license anywhere, by the way. It's just
all about recognition.
Yeah.
It's all about recognition. So if you that's where the competition, that's where the law comes in. This isn't
Mm,
about anything other than competition law. You know,
mm.
can an effective
Well,
monopoly be
I
established?
suppose
Does the organisation have the ability to establish an
the
effective monopoly?
easiest way for people to understand it is, can Super League football be exist, or can UEFA stop them? And the European court said yes, it can. Now they said yes, it can 3 years after the fact, and all the English clubs had pulled out, and basically everybody except Real Madrid, Barcelona, and some Italian team I can't remember. But they took it all the way, and the reality was the court said you can't do what you cannot. You cannot.
Restrict
Yeah,
competition.
exactly. Yeah. Thank
Yeah,
you.
which given that the sports all that competition is quite
Yeah.
ironic, isn't it? Really. So so they awarded the eventually, and they doubled down, and they eventually awarded the license in April, on the basis of requiring some guarantees and in relation to upfront payments of money. And I think there's a suggestion that was put off for a couple of months until July. But at the moment, Chris Grant and the BB in the BBF board are kind of standing behind that license. Now, of course, here's the thing: if they have promised Marshall Glickman and Co. an exclusive license, and then they go around and recognise SLB, there could be an argument that that would put them in breach of the
Mm,
contract with Glickman, and Glickman would then sue them.
mm,
Right? Now, I don't know if this is right or not, but this is a rudimentary legal basis. I am certain that they offered an exclusive license when there wasn't one to offer.
mm,
You know, I just have no doubt that all, and that's not on the basis of anything other than all the things that have come out in the press, all the statements that have been made. Okay,
mm,
there might be an exclusive license to offer, but what it didn't mention was they don't have the power not to recognise. Right,
mm,
so they were made aware that they had the sole right to operate a professional league in Britain, and unfortunately they didn't, and that has put the BBF in a hard place because they got an agreement on one side, and they got the FIBA rules on the other side, and never the twain shall meet.
mm.
They don't fit. So what then happens is we get into some really tawdry brinkmanship over the summer, right? Tawdry stuff. And what I mean by that is, the suggestion came that in fact the British Basketball Federation would prevent the Super League clubs from employing foreign players.
Yeah.
Basically, impact, they would basically go to the government and say to the government, no, you can't have foreign players. Now,
Mm,
that is as bad, that is as awful a breach of competition law, but forget the law, on any level, that's effectively attempting to torpedo the whole league and torpedo the economy, right? And to do it in a backhanded way. Not,
mm.
not in a good faith way, in a horrendously backhanded way. And sorry, Dan, just before you get to it, and at this point, right, the BBS position was, we will actually grant you recognition for a year. Because actually,
Yeah.
we'll grant you recognition. And when the SLB club said, no, we don't need a year, we need to know the basis of our business going forwards,
Mm,
right? We need to know how we're going to operate years and years in advance so we can build a business the way that we want to build it and we can build the sport the way we want to do it. Their response wasn't to say, well, okay, let's sit down with you. Their response was to just go tattling off to the government and say, oh, don't give them any licenses.
mm,
That, I'm afraid, at that point, how could anybody in the SLB
mm.
work with the BBF in good faith? Now I appreciate at this point they've already sued them,
Yeah,
right?
the
So
only the only point I could add to that is it was obviously clearly in breach of the Home Office
yeah,
rules as well, because for those that don't know, the Home Office says which businesses are allowed
yeah,
to employ foreign people or not, and what they do in sport is they use the governing body to say yay or nay that this person meets the criteria. That is all they can do, is say this player meets the criteria that's been agreed before, or this player doesn't. They can't decide that that company doesn't have the right to employ foreign national, as the government has come out
yeah.
and said.
And in the meantime, again, utterly ironically and without any logic whatsoever, the governing body, the BBF, is then seeking to recognise and license British Championship basketball,
Yeah,
which is a secondary competition.
yeah,
We've
as a
needed it for a
second tier
while.
competition. Yeah.
Second tier competition, but we've needed it for a while. It's
Mm.
been moved away from kind of basketball England. I've banged on about this forever and a day, so I'm
Yeah,
happy about that.
yeah, yeah.
But they're quite happy to license that under exactly the same conditions that the or recognise that with club ownership, with the clubs owning the league, all of that stuff, all the stuff that they're so hideously against in relation to the
mm.
first one. So utterly inconsistent.
And the other thing, going back to the tanking the whole economy thing, uh, in the Yorkshire Evening Post again, it stated this week that actually they'd told BCB that they couldn't work with an unrecognised league (brackets Super League Basketball), who had apparently, and I don't know this other than what I read in the Post, who had offered some support around helping them start up with some stuff. I don't know
Yeah,
even
and this
what.
is because ultimately, and this is what everybody needs to understand, right? The only organisation in the sport in this country with any history of the mechanics and the mechanisms required to run a professional sport is currently professional basketball is currently the SLB, right?
Mm,
Basketball England don't have it. The BBF have no staff,
mm,
right? You could also say, yeah, that's fine. No staff equals no backbones. Well,
mm.
maybe. And Basketball England passed it on because basically it's not it shouldn't be their remit.
No.
Their remit should be developing everything else,
Mm,
right? And their chief executive's gone as well, and we'll see what direction that goes in
mm,
due course, right? Um, so all of that is going on, and we've got to the point whereby they're threatening not to offer work permits, and at this point, the government get involved, and they basically say, "Yeah, no." They tell Basketball England, whose job it is, that they are okay to issue
mm,
those permits. So that kind of brinkmanship, that gambit, that backhanded, dishonest gambit by Grant, it fails, right? Every possibility of good faith has gone absolutely out the window at this
mm,
point.
mm.
And then we just come to, well, we're just going to crack on without you.
Yeah.
And whilst I'm not biased. I'm actually not biased because I don't think, you know, the SLB is perfect, and we've talked about this before. I think there are things that even now that aren't being done the way they should be being done. But this is about playing or not playing,
Mm,
right? This is where I came in. It's a starting point, right? What has happened over the summer is that the governing body in this country has put every impediment it possibly could, both honest, legal, and dishonest, forward. Dishonest, is that the right word? Backhanded, probably backhanded as opposed to dishonest, forward to prevent basketball being played in Newcastle, in Kilbride, in Surrey, in Cheshire, in Manchester, in
Leicester and
Leicester, in
Sheffield.
London, in Sheffield, and in one I've forgotten. Sorry, um, Bristol. Sorry, guys. They did everything they can to stop it happening. Manchester, just so everybody's aware, Manchester could not enter the FIBA Champions League because the BBF put a block on it. They've entered the AMBL instead, which quite ironic is a league which is I looked up this morning. It is apparently patronised by FIBA or patronised, if they're using the
Mm,
American word. I
yeah,
think I
yeah,
think patronised as in they're FIBA are patrons of it, as opposed to they look down on it and wave.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Um, Patronised by FIBA, whether it's actually recognised, I've no idea.
Mm,
I couldn't quite make it out, but basically it goes on because it doesn't. Who's it harm?
nobody.
Exactly. So what's the point of the governing bodies to improve the sport? How do we do it? We let people play,
Mm,
right? And obviously, if they're um, jeopardizing the sport, or if they're trying to put trampolines on court, or they're giving 7 free throws for every foul, and yeah, obviously you get in the way, but they're
mm,
not. You know, it's just
mm.
basketball.
Yeah, yeah.
So now, so that's the take on where we're at, which is basically your job is BBF, your job is to get out of the way and not be the impediment.
Mm,
And the people who are watching this and listening, if any of them are on the BBF board, they need to explain why they're willing to be an impediment to professional basketball being played for
mm,
the next 2 years in this country,
mm,
right? Because that's what they are at the moment, because they're refusing to recognize, even though in principle they've already accepted that they would recognize.
mm.
So there's no principle behind it, none.
Yeah.
Okay. Now the counter argument is, well, tell them to stop suing us. Well, the answer is, and my counter argument is, well, why the heck should they?
Mm,
If they think they've got lawyers behind them who think that they've got a good claim in the competition court, that's your problem for giving away something to somebody who isn't who yeah, which had no right to give away.
mm,
And that's where the exclusivity comes back in. Okay, but then the further link to that, and the further link to the rest of the summer is, well, as you've already alluded to, we end up with our head coach GB head coach, being asked various almost unanswerable questions, proper questions,
Yeah,
in
yeah.
press conferences. And if anybody has a chance, go back and watch Mark Stuttle's FIBA pre-tournament and every press conference afterwards.
Mm,
Probably more interesting than the games,
mm,
right? Because Mark is asked a couple of times about the board, about what's going on in the country and in the sport, and all he does is and it's always what Mark doesn't say. He
mm.
talks about Dan Clark.
Yeah.
You know, he talks about the group of people he's got around him, the players he's got around him, right? They are the board and the people who are in charge of this are damned by their silence,
Mm,
right? And he can't talk badly against them. It's his job. He's doing his job. He can't make issues, but he doesn't say a word
mm,
about them to support them because he knows what is going on is wrong. Now, so you're left then with, as you say, you know, three players who've signed in our country. You've got a head coach, you've got a general manager, and you've got the assistant coach Andreas as well,
yeah, yeah.
putting themselves out for a 34-day tour of Europe. Basically, being, you know, because we can't arrange a home pre-tournament game. That'd be far too hard. You
Mm.
know, we can't get Lithuania to come to the copper box and gouge Lithuanian fans' eyes out with prices to make some money. You know, which incidentally we can't
Which
even,
they would pay.
which they would pay, which incidentally we can't even do in 2 months' time
Yeah,
because
yeah,
we're playing them in 2 months' time and no one knows where that game is yet.
yeah, yeah.
Why? Because there's no organizational capability. Because whatever bandwidth is being used at BBF headquarters is being used on this ridiculous political and legal nonsense.
Mm,
Right? So instead, our players, and we'll get to the team in a minute, but our players end up on this 34-day tour of Europe, being the Washington Generals to every
mm,
other federation who wants to put on a show with its stars. So we go to France in Po and they play with 8,000 people and the French come out. Then we
mm,
off to Slovenia and Ljubljana and you know and Doncic is there and he's you know and they're filling their arena with Doncic and we're a great um, foil for that, aren't we? Because we're
mm,
not going to come in and really beat them. Our guy, we need to play games, yeah.
mm,
And our guys are basically before they play in Eurobasket, you know, they're being sent around Europe,
mm,
or plane after plane after plane after plane, gym after gym, venue after venue. Now you might say, "Oh, that's great! It gets them together, it gets them in camp." It's a drag. I'm sorry, you're not telling me that they would have been playing. Um, that they've been 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks on the road before you end up in Finland.
mm,
You know, that's a drag. I mean, where do you get your constant physical support? Where do you get your constant medical support? All of that stuff. Everything's being done on the run with what people are giving you because you're turning up there to fill their gym so they can make money off you,
mm,
right? And and our organization, our federation is utterly incapable. We complain about why games aren't on the TV. Why would they be? We've got no visibility in this country. Why have we got no visibility in this country? Because they won't play any games in this country. They
mm,
won't even play a pre-season, a pre-tournament game in this country. There's no vision. There's no commercial expertise. And there are 12 people sitting around a table. What do those 12 people do?
mm,
Right? What is their function? What
mm,
is their role? So we end up being dragged around Europe. By the time we get to Eurobasket, we're the only team in the competition with a roster which is less powerful than we had in qualifiers.
mm.
Because unfortunately we're missing Quinn Ellis, who's been stitched up by his Italian team and
Yeah, yeah.
they won't let him play. And then we're missing Gabe Olaseni, who's not fit.
Mm,
Right? So suddenly the two fulcrums of our team aren't there. Right? And we're starting a guy, Jibril Bello, who is a promising player who didn't even play a minute in some of the qualifying games.
mm,
Yeah, and he's a second year pro, right, at the centre spot. And suddenly Josh Ward Hibbert, who didn't play a minute in some of the qualifying games, Jelani Watson Gale, that wasn't even one of the squads. Suddenly they're rising up, right? Because the guys that we need to have aren't there. That means that I'm afraid, when you talk about, I haven't talked about the women because I didn't see much of it, but I will in a minute. But in relation to the men's, it's best summarised by the Athletic, who did a preview of it, the preview of Eurobasket before the season, before it started, and you know each team they previewed only probably 3 paragraphs, and their view of Great Britain was, well, it'll be a success if they win a game.
mm.
Well, we won one, so it's a success.
Yeah, yeah.
It took a while to get there. Now, but the point I raise about everything else is what, only country without a TV deal, only country without a home friendly, I'm guessing, okay? Only country who's zipping around Europe without any real base, right? Um, and a country with a federation who's at war with the employers of its head coach and managing director.
Mm,
That's the word out. How can that be a recipe for success?
mm,
And the reason that we think we get battered in Eurobasket is obviously there's a talent thing. You've got to get your best players there, and at the moment we weren't able to get our best players there, and there'll be reasons for that, and it's difficult to get into that in too much detail.
mm.
Um,
In
but
some
everything
ways,
else,
it's easier to get
every,
Luca than it is to get Tosin, for
of
example.
course it is, yeah,
Yeah,
basically, yeah. But the reason we got, Amari Williams just got drafted, but
mm.
he's a rookie, so he's making his way.
Yeah,
It's hard to get
exactly.
him,
Yeah, same
Zidane
thing.
that's fighting on the cusp of getting a job, all
Yeah.
that stuff. Um, but they also have to believe, everybody else in the world doesn't have that problem. Or not
Mm,
everybody else, but most of the teams in the world get their guys.
mm,
Most of the best teams. Yeah, Sengun's playing, Bona's playing for Turkey, Larkin's the American for Turkey. He's delighted to play for them. Obviously, Giannis is over there, Wagner, Schroeder, all those guys, Tice, all those guys,
mm,
and the Serbian guys as well, yeah?
mm.
Um, they get those guys. They wouldn't have played in the qualifiers. So in the
No.
qualifying games, we're quite close because we're unified. We've got a certain level of kind of second tier talent. But then when you get to the real game, and obviously you have windows which only last 8 days, yeah, and therefore no one really knows who's playing. There's very little scouting you can do. It's kind of turn up and play. So we get good results in windows. Doesn't work like that in Eurobasket.
Mm,
Everybody's watching all the games. Everyone's scouting the hell out of here, you know. So when we come out, we end up getting beat by Germany by 60. This Germany by 63 game didn't actually matter. I mean,
mm,
that was just that was a German team against a rundown British team with 9 guys, and the German team just made shot after shot. The Sweden game was slightly disappointing, but
mm,
that was an element of just being run down.
mm.
I'm afraid, guys were being asked to go. And then the Montenegro victory was really an incredible victory, given that Montenegro had to win.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And to be fair, it came down to, guys like Akwazi Yeboah, Miles Heston, probably the more experienced guys, and Miles Heston in particular, basically said, I've had enough of this. I ain't gonna lose
Mm,
this game. And they came back, they were by one with a minute to go, and Miles nails a three from the top.
mm,
And that is why it's positive. It's actually, I'm not down on the team, I'm not down on the program. I thought Mark handled the press conferences, all the questions very, very well. After the Germany game, he basically said, holistically, everything in Great Britain needs to improve.
mm,
Right? That's, you might think, oh, that's an easy thing to say. But again, it's what he didn't say. It's calling out all the people who are responsible for that.
mm,
That's what you're doing when you say something like that. You're calling out everybody, everybody who's part of the organization, which has led us to this. What are you doing? Can you do it better? If you can't do it better, get out, let somebody else do it. That's
mm.
what those messages mean. And the one thing I think we are in a far better place than we were 3 years ago or 4 years ago is because we have a committed bunch of players. And I mean, so Jelani Watson-Gale hardly played much. Yeah, he came out, he gave us 11 points in 8 minutes in the Montenegro game.
Mm.
And he's can't be easy to coach because every touch you think the ball's going up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But he came out and he did what he did, and you've got to give him so much credit for that in a game which meant nothing to anybody else apart from Montenegro and Sweden,
Mm,
right? And Miles Heston, who's been doing this for years and flown back from Mexico and all of those, and Kwasi Yeboah, who basically plays for a Eurocup team, basically stands in the corner shooting threes, and now he's having to come off screens and make plays. Jubril Bello and Dan Aiken, who are being asked to do things that they don't do for their club teams
mm.
because the level is higher and they have to. So all those things are really, really good. And when we compare it to what the Estonia debacle in Eurobasket of
Yeah, yeah,
2022, where for
yeah,
those who don't know, I think we got beat by 35 by Estonia in the last
yeah,
game, and we limped off the court. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
The manner of the defeat was just so indicative of everything that was going on behind the scenes.
Mm.
and just dispirited, dispirited. You would have thought he'd never get better. To be back at Eurobasket, to be beating Montenegro, even and losing to Sweden the way we did was a slightly disappointing. But to win that game really made up for it for me. Um, but you can't run professional sport on a roller coaster.
Mm,
Not at that level. These are the best players in the world that are turning up. You're not running things. If you're not absolutely perfect in the organization, if you can't improve everything about the way you're currently doing things, you're not going to compete. Doesn't matter how hard those guys on the court work. Doesn't
mm,
matter how hard the coaches work. And Stutel told me at the first preseason game for the England for GB for Newcastle, he said he had about 4 hours sleep in a month.
mm,
These coaches are working incredibly hard to try and turn water into wine almost,
mm.
and they're not even being given a cup and a tap to do it. So that's Eurobasket for the men. Eurobasket for the women. Sorry, I've talked about it. Anything you got to say about Eurobasket for the men?
No, I think you've nailed it there. Really, it was one of those things. As I fortunately had something else on the day of the Germany game, so that was the one game I didn't manage to catch, fortunately. But as you say,
But
you
they've got
can't.
4 NBA players. I mean, let's be
Yeah,
honest.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah,
Bonga, who's basically an NBA player.
yeah. They played as hard as they can play, and they did the best they could do, and then they got their reward. I thought at the end for the Montenegro game.
Yeah,
Um, you know, as you say, it was a world away from 4 years ago.
yeah, yeah. It was, and it's just such a shame that the backdrop was one of such acrimony.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Such a shame. But basically, I go back to Mark's words on that one. Everybody holistically in GB has to look at what they need to do to raise the level of everything that we do, right? And that's calling out a lot of people, not by name, quite
Mm.
subtly. I'm calling them out now. I'm basically interpreting what he was saying, just in
Yeah.
case anybody was too dim to understand it. And that's the only way we get better,
Mm.
because this is a ruthless professional sport. Moving back to where we come back to then, just at the end of that, we find out that FIBA have actually instigated a task force.
Yeah.
The FIBA, that's never good. If you've got a FIBA
Mm.
task force involved, that's the type of thing that, FIFA used to do in, East Timor in Indonesia when they're having
Yeah.
wars with each other. And Armenia, Azerbaijan, we've got a task force including three very storied FIBA individuals. One of them is Jorge Garbajosa, who played for the Raptors, who are apparently coming in to sort things out.
Mm.
I don't know what that'll take. I mean, all they need to do is to basically persuade the BBF to grant recognition and try and negotiate some sort of settlement, but more than anything, persuade them to grant recognition and tell the refs that they will not be punished if they ref in the SLB.
Mm.
Then we'll just crack on as before.
Mm.
And then what the court case becomes, I'm afraid, is a bunch of Americans arguing over money.
Yeah.
Well, most primarily Americans.
Mm.
Obviously, I think your dad's Canadian, isn't he?
Yes.
No, but ultimately, that's what it's all about. It's the money in relation to how the sport continues to operate. And I'm not versed enough in competition law, and I'm not interested in, as a lawyer, I'm interested in basketball.
Mm.
And not really interested in the ins and outs of competition law because to be frank, it's far too complicated for me,
Mm.
and not within my training. So yeah, so we got games. So no thanks to the highest level of administration of the sport in this country,
Mm.
which is a crazy sentence if you think about it.
It is. It's madness. It's madness.
Nuts.
Mm.
Have we missed anything?
I mean, we didn't really touch on the women. I
Yeah,
thought
sorry.
obviously Holly was a long way from fit, but
Yes.
sort of hobbled her way through it as best she could, and that's a massive piece out of that team. But they didn't seem to have that magic that they used to have. That sort of
Yeah, I mean the difference in the women's game to the men's game is normally that there's less that it's easier to kind of be an underdog, if I can put it
mm,
that way, because there's a little bit, obviously there's slightly less athleticism, there's slightly less physical differentiation
mm,
between the teams, and the scores are lower. And any time scores are lower, you're generally going to have closer games.
yeah,
And they've always in the past they've kind of hung on that way.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and you're right.
They had something about them as well. We all laughed. The whole positivity glasses thing.
Yeah, yeah,
There was something that was bigger than the sum of the parts, and
yeah.
they looked less than the sum of the
The
parts this
part.
time around.
Yeah, but we don't know what's going on in the
We
background.
don't know what's going on now.
You know, we don't know what level of support and what level of um, level of professionalism they're being provided. And the problem isn't that they're not necessarily getting the highest level. The problem is that everybody else is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
'Cause everybody else, every other federation is pulling together.
Mm,
Is figuring out, is going back and having a plan as to how we're going to do that.
yeah,
We go back to after the tournament, we're having a plan as to how we can have a league this year. Because we've talked about Super League men, but Super League women,
yeah.
where's that
It's
in the,
not
it's
even. It
not even on the
appears not
radar?
even to be considered. It appears not even to be
A thing.
a thing. Yeah,
Just,
it's like the national federation doesn't even know it exists almost.
it just, just utterly befuddling. Uh,
Because that's the other half of it is uh, most of the teams, many of the teams, not all of them, are tied in with a men's team.
yeah.
So actually, if you cut the wheels out of the men's team,
Well,
what?
the women's league would go.
Yeah.
The women's league would meaningfully go. It would become a rec. It would become a semi-pro rec league.
Mm,
I mean, it's been not far from that a few years past.
mm,
Relying on universities to kind of prop it up. Um, there's now the kind of the hints of professionalism coming in. Teams are trying to market the teams with two sides, Caledonia, Newcastle, Leicester, Sheffield, etc., are trying to market them together and
mm,
trying to build the sport up a little bit. I'm not overly impressed with Newcastle's scheduling of a first home SLB game of the season at the same time as they took 70 fans away to Caledonia today.
no. Yeah.
But these things happen, and we got a CVL on a Saturday, so maybe it couldn't be done. Um, but they are trying. There's just no thought given to that. It is just Dan. It's just an incredible situation. You
Mm,
get to the point where your federation doesn't want you playing
mm,
games,
yeah.
and the guy that they've said they want to organise playing the games says he needs the same clubs, but he's going to start in 2 years' time, and or whenever, or when the moon turns to green cheese or whatever.
Mm.
And in the meantime, no, we're quite content. We'll just run the
It's
BCB.
almost like it's not been thought beyond the immediate. It's almost like, well, it's this sort of fight, politic, and we need to win this one argument and not saying, well, actually, but even if you do win this one argument, what does that mean?
Yeah, tunnel vision.
Yeah,
You win the battle, but you don't win the war.
yeah,
And the fact that we're talking about, military imagery and
yeah, yeah, yeah,
war says it
yeah.
all, doesn't it? Yeah, yeah, just really, really weird, I'm afraid. And I don't know. I said, I'll come back to, that podcast we probably did in February or March when this came out, and I think the first thing I said was, Chris Grant's position is untenable.
Mm,
I still think it is. I think it has been
mm,
since ever since he made that decision to offer Marshall Glickman a license on the basis that there wouldn't be any other leagues in this country. That's basically that he could have sole running of that.
mm,
Um, and without understanding that that wasn't something in his power to give.
mm,
And that's the genesis of all of this. It's hubris. It's a lack of attention to detail. It's a lack of any proper board scrutiny as to what has gone on. It's a lot of people reveling in their titles, but not reveling in the responsibility that comes with those titles.
mm, mm.
Phew. Anyway,
Well,
game.
anyway, we'll probably come back to this, I should imagine, several times. But let's get some actual games on the board, shall we? Let's start on Friday night. We'll start in Bristol, where the Bristol Flyers beat the Sheffield Sharks 78-60. Sheffield a little undermanned. Mervyn James didn't play. Chapman only played 6 minutes in the game. Zach and Joe Anderson both hit threes. Bristol first 7 points of the game. They were 6 of 8 from 3-point range in the first 5 minutes and led 19-10.
Yeah, they didn't have a 2 point field goal in the first quarter. They hit threes in the first quarter. I had the advantage of watching Bristol the week before because they came up to Newcastle to play a practice game. Um, and they're in. I mean, what we're going to talk about a little bit with all the teams, but more so with the first couple. Um, that it's always, even when I was involved, it was always the same. You would always, when you review a season, you would always look to become something that you weren't last year.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You would never. It's harder to accentuate the positives than it is to reduce the negatives and take them away, right? And Bristol last year could have built a whole new gym with the amount of bricks they threw away. I'm sorry. We couldn't say it. I didn't say it at the time. It's unpleasant. It's not nice to be calling professional, but some of their games were hideously ugly. And there were games, where they were struggling to get to 55 at home, where they wouldn't make a shot for a week. It seemed like, and they stayed in because they were playing lots of games. There was always mitigation, but at the end of the day, they weren't a team that was built around shooting. I think we can agree.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, what Andreas has gone out, he's gone and found a team which suddenly is going to be built around shooting, and in fact, to the nth degree around shooting, because he started five. He played five out. Started with Owen McCormack effectively as the five. No, McCormack's a shooter. And Owen McCormack basically played the four last year because they had Leslie Smith and they had the centre whose name I forget.
Yeah, he's gone out of my head now
Yeah,
as well. But yeah, they come
it
back to
wasn't Brad Green. He was here before, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was.
It was.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, I'm sorry. I'm rubbish with names.
Yeah.
I remember anybody from 20 years ago. Perfect. 1 year ago, no chance.
When we get to season 25, we'll remember this guy's name.
Yeah, but they generally always played the centre. They were quite big, and the spacing wasn't great. And now it was quite clear that basically, they had a lot of athletes, last year, but they weren't efficient. So what Andreas has gone out and he's recruited a team, and it was exactly the same at Newcastle because they shot lights out at Newcastle as well, who are smart, savvy, and going to shoot the ball. And in Anderson, he's got one of those kind of American guards that we see every so
Which
often.
one, Zach or Joe?
Joe.
Yeah.
In Joe Anderson, he's got one of those American guards that we see every so often in this league, who look like they should be an accountant and have played their entire career against people who are looking down on them thinking he should be an accountant. I'll tell you, because when the game was on the line at Newcastle, it was a friendly game, it was a pre-season game, but it was 82 each with a minute to go.
Yeah.
Joe Anderson got the basketball, he got Brett Reed onto a switch with him, Newcastle screen, and he pulled up and he knocked down a three as if, it was Steph Curry and Mark was some big guy, as if he'd been doing it all his life, right? And he's probably slightly athletically deficient, but he knows his game, right? And his game is going to be based, so the first 3 months of this season, on every other bugger in the league underestimating him. Right, and he's going to kill teams as a result. He's a little cross between. I had him as a kind of the bastard love child of Ryan Patton and Steve D'Agostino, and that's 2009, 2010 Sheffield Sharks. The ball. Because he's got the point guard chops of Patton, and with like D'Agostino, he likes to dribble to his left and shoot the three, and that's one. Zach Anderson, six. Was it Zach Anderson?
Zach. Yeah.
6'6". You'd think he's playing the 4 spot, catch and shoot. Absolutely. I think he's now something ridiculous because in the preseason game at Newcastle he was 4 or 4. If you leave him alone, he's going to shoot it, and he feels comfortable making it. Joachim, whose first name I forget, another kind of sneaky athletic guy, a little bit like Ethan Wright.
Yeah.
Can knock down a shot. Again. Probably only 6'2", 6'3", probably not.
Will is the first name.
Will Joachim, probably 6'2", 6'3", not the heaviest guy in the world. You're going to probably again, he's going to be one of those guys that everyone's going to say, "What have you got?" He's going to show them. Why? Because he's always had to. That's been his game. That's how he's got where he's got. And so that's kind of 3 shooters. You add in McCormack as a stretch 5.
Damon Robinson.
Sorry, Demond
Robinson.
Sorry, Demond. Good spot, Dan. How did I forget? Actually, he's one of the better centers last year, Demond Robinson. So apologise for that. You add in then Cameron Holden is kind of your wild card. He's not a shooter, but he can create shots for everybody else. So they're becoming a little bit like Cheshire last year. You have Holden on the basketball, you have McCormack in the Skylar White role, you have a lot of shooters around, athletes, whatever, and you play up and down and you make shots. And they just came out and they just blitzed them with blitz
mm,
Sheffield with
mm,
shots. Um, and how sustainable they've signed a big centre as well who came off the bench, Darnell Brodie, who's a unit, who's going to give them some good minutes when they need some physical minutes, I think. Obviously, he just came in literally the day before the Newcastle game, so he's fresh. So I probably haven't seen the best of him. And a Serbian guy, American Serbian guy, who I was really proud of because I was watching the preseason game in Newcastle.
mm.
I worked out which one was a Serbian guy the first time he did it. Milos Dugalic, he just
Mm,
moved like a Serbian guy. And
yeah.
I checked the number, I checked the sheet. Yes, I was right.
Uh,
It's just astounding. So they're quite well put together. I mean, they're gonna bomb team. They're gonna bomb some teams if they can keep their legs about them. If they've got enough depth when it comes to playing the European games, when it comes to getting on planes, because obviously shooting depends on legs. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
But and they've signed a British kid, Jonathan Brown, who's
Mm,
played very well in the summer tournament. He's kind of playing the point guard spot as well, which is interesting because we're looking for obviously Corey Samuels isn't back, so he's obviously decided Brown's an upgrade, and we're looking for British players to become point guards. We don't have
mm,
many.
no.
I was actually showed it's a nice shooting touch in the nice scoring touch in the preseason game. Not quite as much in this game. So I like Bristol. I like the way they've set up. What I will say is it's always easier. Um, if you're going to have a five, it's always easier to start the season when you're a five-out team
Mm,
because there's all the spacings there naturally. The shoot, catch and shoot, the passing is there. And it's naturally the ball's going to move. Teams' rotations aren't going to be as good because they're looking to protect the basket. So you're going to find the open shots. The key will be 6, 8, 10 weeks down the road when you come to play that team's second and the third time.
mm,
In relation to can they keep shooting those shots? Can they keep making them? Can they keep playing that way? Sheffield looked, to use a cricket phrase, undercooked.
mm,
Um, they have an abundance of talent.
mm,
I was a little concerned when I looked at their roster as to how many balls they'd be using.
mm,
Because Mervyn James, primary scorer, guy who can give the basketball to get the ball. Prentice Nixon, primary scorer. Rod Chapman, last year, what we saw before he went down,
mm,
primary scorer. Dirk Williams, well, if Dirk's shooting the ball, you're never going to be unhappy, are you?
no.
And then you add in a rookie who's got a good rep in Nick Kerr, and you add in two bigs, and one of them's William Lee, who's been around who can shoot the ball as well.
Mm,
Add in Mike Ocherobia, Jordan Routinho, then in theory you've got all your bases covered. You've got a bit of experience, you've got people who know the league, you've got athleticism, you've got shooting, but they just didn't look ready. And to be fair, as I say, you're playing against a five-out team who are making shots. That's the hardest thing to do the first game or two of the season because your defensive rotations are hard. What I was a little bit surprised about, they didn't seem to have much chemistry going, and maybe that's because they were getting bombed. Fair enough. But they've got a few guys who've been around for a little bit. Rod Glasgow, Prentice Nixon, Dirk Williams, William Lee, Jordan Routinho, Mike Ocherobia. They really should be finding a way to pull each other together. And it's a 35-point game at the end of the third quarter, or
mm,
something
mm,
ridiculous.
mm,
And so they they benefited last year. We talked about them a lot last year because Routinho and Anderson did a lot of the dirty work last year. Didn't need the basketball. Um, Kern and James, I think, are guys who are going to need the basketball.
mm,
Now, as I say, how do you keep that going? How do you keep everybody happy with the touches? That's not even including the big guy who always needs to touch the basketball to make and run and rebound. And what they had last year, of course, was in Clay, they had a pretty dominant big guy.
mm.
And the new guy whose name
Deloach, Jeremy
Deloach,
Deloach.
is out of college, I think. Not sure if he played pro last year. I have to check that. But he doesn't look to be at the same athletic level as Clay.
Mm,
Which means that three-man game they had last year, going with McGill and Nixon and Clay setting the screen on either side, or McGill and Chapman and Nixon and Clay setting the screen on either side, that probably won't be as impactful because it's going to be harder just to spread the floor and give the ball to Deloach than it would be to give the ball to Clay. So therefore, how does the ball move? What are they going to get? What offense are they going to get? Because if it's just going to be bailout offense, um, and bailout offense is give Dirk the ball, give Prentice the ball, then you're limiting your ceiling there. And with all that talent, that some of them are going to have to find a way of giving up a little bit for the group to work. It's massively early. I mean, this is why I prefer having trophy games at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
really
yeah.
do. It's a really, I mean, the basketball is the watch it. This, and we all every year I have the same nuggets who tell me, oh, these teams aren't as good as last year. The league's getting worse, and it's like, no, these teams aren't as good as last year's teams in May.
Mm,
But by that point, all the teams have been together for 9 months,
yeah, yeah.
right? If you go back to September, these teams are exactly where last year's teams were.
Yeah, yeah,
You know what
yeah.
I mean? And so no, the league is not getting worse. The league is adapting and changing. Um, but they're going to have to find a way of, as I say, creating shots for each other.
Mm, mm.
And that's
I
what,
think the thing to me was just to run through the story of the game. There was a 10-1 start at the beginning of the second quarter. They went up 15 Bristol. Dirk Williams got Sheffield back into it. It was 37-32 just before halftime, and then an 11-0 run around halftime, 48-32, and as you say, it just went away from there. Uh,
well,
I
sorry,
think the thing for me that was the most surprising is basically Chapman didn't play and James didn't play. I
yeah,
get that, but they still look to have a lot of offense, and yet they scored 60 points.
yeah, and 60 points was probably an overestimate because they had 50 going into the last 3 minutes,
Mm,
and when the game was, the game was dead. Yeah, and it takes a while to establish a pecking order on a team.
mm,
Right, that team, needs to have, particularly if you're someone like Chapman who's coming back off a serious injury.
mm,
Chapman was the alpha
mm,
last year until he left, and Nixon really stepped up after that, right? But Chapman's obviously not ready yet. He played, he's obviously nursing, and Bagley's good that they've kept him. Credit to Sheffield for keeping him, despite the fact he had an injury. It generally always pays dividends. I remember we
mm,
kept Chapman
mm,
after he did his Achilles, and we brought him back. And it just buys players love you for it.
mm,
Players will go the extra length for it because if the organisation is looking after them and more importantly showing faith in them,
mm,
despite the fact that they've had a serious injury, then when you need them, they will be there for you. It's a big thing, and so much in our league is psychological. So that way, but shot creation, Nixon primarily creates for himself. Chapman, the pick and roll guy. Um, Glasgow again primarily creates for himself. They're not going to throw the ball at the bigs much. What struck me was William Lee didn't get one pick and pop in
mm,
the whole game. And William Lee's been a pick and pop guy ever since he's been in the league, or even a short roll guy. It never happened in the whole game. The shot he had at Leicester, he had at Manchester, where he would just fade out to the 3 point line, and or he'd take one dribble to his right and rise up and shoot it. He just didn't get any touches like that. So I think they've got a lot. Yeah, it's not just about putting your talent on the floor, is it? Sometimes
mm, mm,
they got a lot. They got some cohesion to go through. On top of that, you go to Bristol, and Bristol are shooting the lights out, and it's a loud gym. It's not the great. It's tight to the court. There's no barriers in front of you. There's a point in time, kind of halfway through the third quarter, if you're a team at Lions, and you just kind of choke it up and say, right, this is a hell of a long season.
mm,
We're just going to walk out of this gym and we'll get ready for next week. And but it's as I say, the I don't like the structure. I prefer playing the trophy games first. I know people say it's a glorified preseason. Yes, it is,
mm,
but it improves. Yeah, I get that it is. Albeit there's a trophy at the end of it, and the teams who get the preseason right benefit from it by getting the trophy. So
yeah,
that
yeah,
was
yeah.
Newcastle and Bristol last year, who were nowhere near the two best teams,
Mm,
but there were the two ready teams at the beginning, who probably because of the EMBL, etc., who got through it and ended up in the final. You
yeah.
know, whereas and also for me it establishes the primacy of the league as well, which means that there's no excuses when you're in the league.
Mm,
You've had your 3 or 4 weeks to sort your team out, to sort your roster change out, because no coach is ever going to get everybody right. It doesn't
no, no.
like that. Um, and it's probably a bit of bitterness actually, because my second year with Newcastle, we were 1-4 because we couldn't get Trey Moore in the country on a visa.
Mm,
And they'd been trophy games, would have won the league easy.
mm,
There's a few other reasons, but I just I get the chronology thing, I get the way it looks, but I don't think enough people really care about that for it to matter that
mm,
much.
mm,
That makes any sense. I get the logic. I get it makes more logical sense to have a season where the leagues, you start with a league and you finish with the league, but I don't think it's basketball sense. I don't think it doesn't necessarily mean that we can have the best team win the league. That's the only
mm.
thing.
Zach Anderson, 16.6 rebounds, 4 of 6 for three. McCormack, 15 points, 4 of 8 for three. Will Joachim and Joe Anderson, 12 each. They were 15 of 37 from three and only 13 of 32 from
Well, it says
two.
it all, doesn't it? I mean, you're not forcing, you're not running off the line. It's again for those who've never listened to this rubbish before. The first indicator in my first indicator of a team as to how committed and how locked in they are is how well they defend the 3 point line.
Mm,
The 3 point line is an absolute weapon. And it's who's getting those shots. And if the shooters are getting those shots, that's a problem. I want to see Joe Anderson penetrate to the rim every single time and finish over a guy who's 6'9".
mm.
I don't want him dancing with me on the 3 point line, you know. And obviously we'll get to it as the season goes on and we'll see how teams adjust. But you have to be locked in on the 3 point line, on defending the 3 point line. The least glamorous part of the game.
Yeah.
Close.
Nixon, 14 points, 5 assists. Jalen Jaloch, 13 points. Williams, 12.7 rebounds. They were 6 of 30 from three, and they also missed 11 free throws. Speaking of missing free throws, let's go to Leicester Riders 72, London Lions 69,
79.
79 even, 79,
Yeah,
sorry.
Rob would be happy with that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's on the phone now saying his
Yeah.
dad said it's right.
Yeah. Obviously, Leicester announced before the game that Denzel Mahoney had gone. I mean, Adamu did warm up quite vigorously before the game, but didn't play. Ryan,
I mean, he dunked it a lot.
no, there was a lot of physio
All
running
right, okay,
different
sorry. We can
paces and what. He got a
move
good
on. Yeah.
sweat on, to be fair.
To be fair, he
Uh,
didn't play the last GB game, did he? So I'm assuming that.
no, and I don't think he played against Žalgiris either, if I remember
Okay,
rightly.
I didn't see that.
Uh, Ryan Mikesell, I believe, is also out injured, although I don't think he could have played anyway. But I'm sure we'll get the
There's
rules.
only so many seats on the bench, isn't there?
Well, yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
Neil Wilkinson counting the chairs.
Yeah, I think, well, you need a few rows I think they need a second bus to get all the staff in, to be
Yeah, I
honest
think
with
there's only seven. Yeah, I think you're at 18 seats on the bench. That was what it
you.
used to be. I'm not sure
Yeah,
about
yeah,
security.
yeah,
It does. I mean, it does entertain me that they do have. I mean, it's good. Ultimately, it's professional. It's good.
yeah,
They've got proper
yeah,
staff. All
yeah.
that stuff, and we're all kind of in the. We're all me and you, and those of us who are aficionados of this stuff. We're in them. We quite like the kind of cheapness
Yeah, yeah,
of the league and doing everything and getting by and all of that stuff,
yeah,
and let's have an assistant coach who's a lawyer who doesn't get paid, and let's turn up for a gym with in a football sports center, in a football outdoor football pitch center and
yeah,
stuff where it's freezing cold and you've got to stand by the or we like that type of stuff because it adds a degree of character to what we're doing.
yeah,
But it
yeah,
was wonderfully entertaining last year to be at the Virtue Motors Arena when the Eagles with one coach beat the Lions with seven.
yeah,
Right?
yeah,
It was entertaining. It's like, but at the end of the day, if they've got, if the way forward is to do what they have and is to have that
mm,
degree of
mm,
staff and that degree. Now, obviously, you've got to fund it, but if you're getting 7,000 Zalgiris fans in, maybe that's helping
mm.
them fund it.
Yeah, yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
question mark. So, yeah,
So let's start the game off. Evie with the three on the first play, but it was really hard for Leicester to score. London's physicality, their pressure, their full court, really impressive from front row seat that I had. Leicester missed a ton of free throws as well. London not really able to take advantage. There was only a point or so in it in the first quarter.
this is a weird game to talk about because London were just cycling through so many players that they were getting in their own way, from my perspective. Leicester, obviously, I think they're down to four imports. Is that right?
Hmm.
O'Neill never showed up, and Mahoney's gone, so Rob will be recruiting, no doubt, a couple more, at least one more. Um, Leicester basically a new team. Outside of Spencer Johnson, they're basically a new team, and Duke Shelton. Um, and I was more interested in watching Leicester than I was in watching London because I think Leicester's more kind of indicative of the level of the competition of the league.
Hmm.
Because as you say about London, McGusty, what is he, 6'6"? Must be 6'5",
Mm,
6'6".
mm,
The guard Reynolds, and we'll get to the big guy in a minute. But just on Leicester, they were competitive, they were scrappy. Um, Evie, I think, is a guy who didn't play last year.
Yes.
He
Well, I
played
think he was somewhere pre-season and didn't
Yeah, he
play
played
after
like a
that.
guy who didn't play last
Yeah,
year.
yeah, yeah.
Again, we had that with Fletcher.
Mm,
If you've got a guy who's coming back with a point to prove,
mm,
because he hasn't got a chance to play, then he played like that, and he was pretty impressive. He has got a step either way. He might be more of a scoring guard than a passing guard, but we'll have to wait and see about that. But he was pretty impressive. Um, and then Leicester were kind of mixing and matching with everybody else. I could say I couldn't really, it wasn't a normal I mean, they shot 12 threes in this game.
mm,
Normally
mm.
Rob's teams normally shoot 25 to 30 threes.
Yeah, yeah.
The spacing wasn't quite, what it has been previously. Johnson and Getman looks, but against that, you're playing London, and London's got the longest team in the league, and as you say, their perimeter
Mm,
defense is really good. So they weren't jacking up threes either.
mm.
Um, Akko, is it Akko?
A cot.
Akot,
Mm,
yeah. He looked interesting.
mm.
He looked like he had a little bit of confidence to his game and a body to his game. The kid that really interests me is Boardman Raffet.
Yeah.
He again came out of the summer leagues in London. He played in college last year. I think he was looking to go abroad. Leicester picked him up. Great pickup. He came in, looked like he was ready to play. Made a
Mm,
couple of threes. Just had that bounce about him. That kind of okay, I belong here. And that's always a massive boost. For if we get a young British player like that,
mm,
because so that's good. We always need to talk about the British guys. And then after that, it was just a bit of a slugfest, wasn't it?
mm. Yeah, 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 yeah,
And I didn't really see much in the way of, I mean, and the definitive um, player in the game was Joel Scott.
yeah.
Who
Uh,
Joel Scott remind you of, Daniel?
who did he remind me of? I don't know. I hadn't thought. I was just thinking of Joel Scott. Go on. Where are you going?
Andre Smith.
You know what? Who said it to me the other day? It might have been my dad, actually, said Andre Smith.
Andre Smith.
Yeah, it was on
Because
Saturday. I think my dad said it, Andre Smith, and I was like, Andre Smith wasn't quite as wide and as strong. Maybe shot the ball a bit better.
Yeah, well, Scott stepped down, made two out of three threes,
Yeah,
but no one would guard him out there because of the size of him.
yeah, yeah,
Smith moved, whatever, maybe it was comparable to the league as it was at the time, but Smith moved people just like Scott did.
yeah. Mm.
And Scott was moving some big people,
He was moving people.
and he was moving them, and he looked like he played like, as I say, Andre Smith, for those who don't know, played for the Everton Tigers before
Mm.
Everton followed every other football club in the history of British basketball and decided they were just fed up ploughing money in.
They needed a left back.
They needed a left back probably a reserve physio for what Andre Smith did. And gave up. And he's a guy who played North Dakota. He went on to play in good leagues in Turkey, but he was a dominant big guy.
Israel as well, he played.
Israel, yeah,
Yeah.
really big, broad, scored at will underneath, and you
Mm,
had to basically double, triple. You had to do everything for him,
mm,
take him away. And Joel Scott gave off those vibes,
mm,
and it's quite clear, And basically, the coach, one of the Sabonis clan, he basically he went through all his players and eventually settled on the five that were always going to finish the game for him.
mm, mm.
And they just about had enough. He was in the I was in the middle of the third quarter. I was beginning to think he was going to FAFO, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah,
Because but then again, they've got bigger fish to fry than winning every game in the league.
yeah, yeah.
You know.
So, story of the game. Philip with a three on the first quarter buzzer. London then had 4 points to start the second quarter. They opened up a lead. Then they got out to 12. It looked like they might get away in the second quarter. But in the third quarter, Nate Martin and Evie got Leicester back into it, got it to 43-48. London still got it back to 10. And then Evie hit some ridiculous shots
Oh yeah. I
in the
mean,
fourth quarter, and they got it to two a couple of times, including with 4 minutes to go. But then they just gave the ball to Joel Scott, and he just moved people out of the way.
yeah. I mean, that was it. I mean, Nate Martin's interesting because because it's a very unfair way of you can't judge him on playing against that London lineup. But his plus minus was good in the game,
Mm,
and a couple of times he was under pressure at the top and he was able to go off the dribble and attack. I'm not sure he's kind of the post player that Nelson Henry was, or
mm.
he's clearly not. He's clearly not Charles Thompson.
No.
Leicester fans need to understand just how spoiled they were last year.
Yeah, yeah,
Jalen
yeah,
Hutton and Charles Thompson as rookies.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, that was, that's probably the recruitment job for the last decade. That
yeah.
is,
Mm, mm,
and even Abercrombie as well. And they all fitted together. Um, but he's going to be important for them because they always need that big guy who can hold down the middle a little bit, and Shelton can come in and kind of release his chaos.
Mm.
And
Although it was very controlled chaos
he
for
was for
the
about three
two.
quarters there. Yeah, he was for about three quarters, wasn't he? But yeah, and that's it. But I know I like what they got. I mean, they got to figure out. Obviously, you have to figure out. Suleiman, Boardman,
Rafe.
Rafe. Okay, very bit of Anglo-French going on there.
Yeah.
Um,
He has something, and they both had headbands on, which
yeah,
accentuated it. Is he has something of Aaron Wright about him
yeah,
in that sort of beats you with his slowness, sort of
yeah.
deceptively moves in an odd
Yeah,
way,
yeah,
sort of
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's real confidence as well. I
Yeah,
thought,
yeah,
which
yeah.
was important. The
Which
first game.
I mean, I went to their preseason game against USA Select, and he missed about 5 layups. So to bounce back from that was pretty good.
Yeah, but it's what you see. And so yeah, and then Mitchell, the backup point guard, who I think is probably not a point guard. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. I didn't get point guard vibes from him.
Mm,
I got kind of shooter vibes from him. So they've got some things. So, but you can't compare them against anything with that London team.
no,
It's
no.
slog of a game, which is exactly the way that Sabonis wanted it to be. Um, and as I say, in London, I mean, they're playing with like Dean Williams, who's 6'9". He's playing small forward.
Mm,
Rice, right here. The one thing he's got so many players that the players are going to lose a little bit of rhythm. And
mm,
a few of the guys he's got there are rhythm guys.
mm,
So Solowadi didn't make many shots. Williams didn't make many shots. Rye really never really had that much of an impact. And you have to be careful that, you have your players are all owning it. Because if there's too
mm,
many of them play and they're in and out all the time, they don't end up owning the game. So
mm,
it kind of becomes somebody else's job to do it. In this game, it was Joel Scott.
mm.
He owned the game,
Yeah.
but it can't be him every single time. So, having too much talent is as much a blessing as a curse sometimes. It gives you issues. But you'd like the look of that
Mm,
London roster at the moment.
you would.
I'd like a little bit more shooting. If I was them, I think I'd like a little bit more shooting. Um, because Rye isn't really a shooter. He's a scorer. He can shoot, but he's a scorer. Williams, Soloade, Sandy. Sandy played well, to be fair.
Yeah, he did.
Um, all those guys, they don't. Even Tariq is kind of the coach a couple of times got a bit peed off with Tariq when he over dribbled a little bit. It was really, and the good thing about European coaches is that they don't hide it.
Mm, yeah, yeah, yeah.
So there's a couple of times where he's like, suppose he's like, oh, whatever, what
Mm.
we doing while the play's going on.
Well, Solowadi and him played together in Spain for three
Yeah, yeah,
years,
yeah, I
so
heard that,
he
yeah.
ought to know.
So yeah, but it's gonna, yeah, if they ever get to where they need to get to, it'll be fine. But as you
I
say,
think
they've
the
got
interesting
Dama,
thing,
they got Mike, so come,
yeah,
I mean, it's not really fair.
yeah, I think the interesting thing for them is, do they have enough size in Europe? Because they obviously pounded Leicester on the glass, but
Yeah.
whether they'll be able to do that in Eurocup is
Yeah, I
my
mean,
question.
you're actually right. They don't actually have it other than Price, who really wasn't very impactful. They don't really have a true 7 footer, do they?
No, no,
No, I mean, so yeah, so here we are. We're talking about them being big,
yeah,
and
yeah,
being small. There's a bunch of
yeah,
six guys against a bunch of 6'8",
yeah,
6'9" guys,
yeah,
and then the bigger guys will be the European guys, who are a bunch of
yeah,
7 foot guys. So
yeah,
who knows?
yeah.
Weird
Uh,
basketball, isn't it? They're a small team. So
yeah.
mm.
Evie 22, 4 of 6 from three.
Yes, I
Martin,
did think at one point it was going to be all about Evie.
very good.
Thank you.
Martin and Boardman Rafe both 10, both 3 of 3 from the floor. Leicester was 7 of 12 for three. You mentioned that, but they missed 10 free throws as well.
Mm. He'll be
Um,
good at Christmas, shouldn't he?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Scott 25 and 7, 10 of 14. He was actually the only player in double figures for London. They had 50 points in the paint, 17 offensive rebounds, 17 second chance points, and 17 points off
I mean,
turnovers.
it's going to be fascinating because, if coaches watching this, you're not going to be able to play Joe Scott one on one.
Mm,
I can see that after about 10 minutes.
mm,
Even at the end, Leicester were throwing a couple of doubles at him when they
mm,
could. Um, so you're going to have to give up something, and it can't be letting him just barrel his way at the basket and score.
mm. Mm,
So it'll be interesting to see how some of the coaches adapt to that and how they, what doubles they run because that's strategy in the game. When you can't just run two players at a guy straight away. You've got to work out when you're going to do it, which players are on the court, where's the double team coming from, who um who you're going to double off, who you're going to give up the shot to. There's a lot of strategy that goes into that, which always makes it interesting. So that's where it becomes a coach's game.
mm. Manchester basketball 92, Cheshire Phoenix 89. Kane Henry had an injury, and I didn't write it down. I can't remember what it was, so he didn't play. 12-3 inside the first 4 minutes, an early timeout for Ben Thomas, and they stayed behind for the rest of the first quarter. Max Jones then with 9 points to start the second quarter. Manchester went 35-16 in front. The lead peaked at 21 midway through the second.
Yeah, this was an old school game, wasn't it?
Mm,
I thought it was an old school game. BBL up and down. Lots of shooting, lots of talent. Really good game to watch. Um, Manchester, they got a couple of British players we need to talk about.
mm,
Cleary, who's looked, played in German Pro A last year and he looks like he's a really confident guy. There's not many British guys who can take someone off the dribble, do the kind of the James Harden jump back and nail the three at the top of the key off a high release. Adukase, who came off the bench and was really aggressive and a good body and played um, aggressively. But they played with a lot of emotion, Manchester, and a lot of kind of a bit of a sugar rush.
mm.
I thought, when the point guard is knocking down those threes. Remind me his name, not Scott, the one you've just told us about.
Jones.
Jones. And he's knocking down those threes at the top of the key, and they're flying around and getting what they want. They've got an interesting issue. They've got a 7 footer.
Mm.
Well, my rule of 7 footers is that it's bloody hard being a 7 footer in our league.
Mm,
Bloody hard being effective being a 7 footer. We can count them on there's very few
mm,
you can tell me about.
mm,
I mean, outside of Getty's maybe, and he was probably
mm,
6'11", you have to have a quickness about you. And I thought he struggled a little bit in this game with the quickness around him. Obviously, Cheshire's the team you're going to struggle the most about with the guys around them. But yeah, Manchester look like they've got talent. They're quite obviously Kane Henry to come back as well. Cody John to come off the bench and look to score the ball. The two guards I think are rookies, so that's a point of how quickly will they establish rhythm and tempo of the game as opposed to just balling out. But overall, they're going to be a fun team to watch. Cheshire, I thought, kind of played about 14 minutes before they decided they were going to play like Cheshire.
mm,
And that was led by, and Rideau struggled. He's never been great in first games of the season. And there were, a little bit the ball was sticking with him. And what Ben Thomas did was he gave him 12 minutes, you
mm,
know, and he brought in this kind of jack in the box guy by the name of Patrick Robinson,
mm,
who played like a left-handed Larry Austin, probably with a little bit better defense, to be honest. And whilst not a guy you'd think is, he's just a very strange type of player to name, but kind of a Patrick Beverley type of defensive player in the NBA. And a guy who won 100 games in college as well, so looked him up. So a winning player. And I thought when Robinson came in, the whole tempo of the game changed for them. It wasn't just that he scored the ball getting to the rim. It was like he was able to penetrate on his left hand and get shots going. And of course, Skylar showed up.
Three threes for Skylar White, one for Jackson Brenchley, and Michael Diggins had it down to 6 just before halftime. Third quarter, Cody John pushed it back out to 12, but then Cheshire with a 17-3 finish in the last 4 minutes took the lead, 63-65 going into the fourth.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few. I mean, I liked what Matt Orton is obviously a new coach, ex Cheshire and Mersey player.
Mm.
Remember him playing for Mersey, not so much playing for Cheshire.
I think he only played like a dozen games or something.
Yeah, but for Mersey, that was the year they had Miles Hessen after after the money went away, and Tony G was coaching him, and he was solid. He was kind of a left-handed pull up shoot. I didn't shoot enough, quite enough threes for me, but he had a Dutch passport, which is why he got it. He got the job, I think. And he's had success in Austria coaching and elsewhere. And I mean, I mean, he had at one point he had Max Jones guarding Skylar away.
Mm,
He was not afraid just to make that change. We're guarding him like a guard, which is kind it doesn't matter if he's going to stand the perimeter shooting threes, we're going to be out there. Because the one time, obviously, he had Nicholson on him. Skylar basically crossed him over, stepped back, and drained a three.
mm,
Because the big guys are always looking to protect the basket, and so I like that kind of. I'm always looking at new coaches and saying, well, how do they run it? Are they adjusting straight away? Are they trying to build a bond with their guys? Whatever. And I like some of his defensive adjustments in the game. But the SLB or the BBL is a weird animal.
mm,
Once you start running, once the other team starts running, you're going to start running. Your guys
mm,
are going to start running. And at the end, the game kind of got out of control of the coaches, I thought. And it was just the players making plays.
mm.
If you got that impression.
Yeah, yeah. And Irvine had Manchester back in the lead. They traded leads in the fourth quarter, and eventually it was threes from Jones and Cleary with 93 seconds left put Manchester out to a 7 point lead, and that was kind of
Yeah, I
the
mean, that was a
decisive.
welcome home shot from Cleary.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, good for him. He's a Manchester lad. He's come back. He's playing in front of a full gym, which is credit to Manchester, albeit
yeah.
at discounted prices. So we'll have to see if they can get it in. But hopefully a few people will come back. I'm never that sure that people do come back, but I hope they will, and there's certainly no harm in trying. So that was kind of your exclamation point shot for a guy who's gone away to America and he's gone to Germany, he's come back home. And as I say, he's a guy to keep an eye on because if you're looking at who are the Americans on that team, Cleary would have been one of them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know, and I know it's a bit old-fashioned to just kind of say, oh, compare Americans to Brits and that type of thing. But Cleary's come through Manchester. And clearly he has a body, he has the athleticism, and he has the shooting ability. And the biggest thing is always the shooting ability. Can they shoot? There's loads of guys who can do lots of things, in British guys who grew up with athletes and work hard and all that stuff, but they have to be able to shoot.
Mm,
You know. So was kind of happy for him. Um, Cheshire, yeah, I mean, 12 minutes for Rideau, you wouldn't have seen that coming. Robinson took over, played 30 minutes, and Ben Thomas trusted him. They've kind of got a revolving catalogue of kind of players,
mm,
I like to obviously Tobias Cameron, we've got to give him a mention, a
mm,
New Zealander with very decent BBL genealogy.
mm.
Yeah, and he played. Obviously, he's about half the size of his dad, to be fair.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Um, but he played in a way whereby, he played good defense. He got to the rim a couple of times. He got offensive rebounds, made those winning plays. He's not just kind of a stand there, look at me, shooter. So which was very much what Piro was. Piro was
Mm,
very much a winning player. I mean, he made winning plays all the time.
mm,
Very smart player. So, they've got in his British passport because Piro was obviously born over here. Um, that's a bonus for them. In relation to the obviously Skylar's going to be the kind of heart and soul of the team. Robinson was a player of all the players in the four games we've seen. There's only two that really, really intrigue me. Really intrigued me beyond the rest. One was Robinson. We'll get the other one in the next game.
mm.
Um, and I just thought his defense at times was I remember a defense like that, I was like, oh, this guy's making him turn three times. He's not moving, and he's doing it without cheating for steals and that type of stuff. And I thought he was the driving force with them. And some of the other guys are going to be impactful. They're going to kind of the kind of guys that you kind of forget about and make shots. And Brenchley looked aggressive, athletic, and capable. Policelli was willing to shoot the ball. And obviously they got the big Irish kid, Matt Zona.
Mm.
Matt no Zona, yeah.
Zona, yeah,
No, yeah. Again, our lunatic rules which say if you play for Ireland, you count as a British player. It's just nuts. But and even the British lad, Damari Lindo, who I think is a British American who came through college, he Division Two college. His defense was pretty solid as well. And
yeah.
actually, Ben went away from offense at a time and put some scrappy players out there, and it really served them well. So that said, they don't get close if Scally doesn't make six threes,
Mm.
each one of which is more ridiculous than the next,
Yeah, yeah.
than the last. Um, but you can see the
You
germ,
you you
you see the germ
referenced
of
the
something there with
you
them.
you referenced Rideau in the first game of the season. I seem to remember Skylar hitting 7 in that first game of the
Yeah,
season
yeah, yeah.
that you were
Yeah.
talking about. But yeah,
Well, the biggest thing with Skylar's threes were, to be honest, he made them when they were down 20.
yeah. Mm,
There are certain players who make shots which are personality shots,
mm,
which are saying we're not going to go. This isn't happening to us,
mm,
right? I had a few, Charles was the biggest one. You need the shot, whatever. And the shot isn't the shot that you need when you're up seven and you're high fiving and you're
mm,
freewheeling and you're celebrating. The shots you need when you're down 15 in the second quarter and you're about
mm,
to run out of somebody else's gym. That's when you find out who's got the cojones, you
mm.
know. And Skylar has. I think we know that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The question is, of course, how repeatable is it? And how are they going to continue to be able to kind of generate that level of good shot? And also, as I say, they had a great team 2 years ago, right?
Mm,
In terms of how they meshed together. They had Rideau, they had Rye, they had Maceo Jack, they had Skylar, they had Ethan Chargewell, and a few
mm,
other guys as well. Yeah, and Cameron Christian, yeah.
mm,
They had a team which really meshed together and um, kind of fitted. And Rideau became the head of that snake, but you could
mm,
always give it to Rye when they really needed a basket. Around the end of the third quarter, it was Rye time.
mm,
So, and then the question is now, what's Rideau going to be without Rye?
mm,
That's a big because is it going to be his team without Rye, or because on what you saw, the way that Robinson played, can you play him and Robinson together? Because neither of them are really shooters. So can they play together, or is it going to be a push me pull you? It's interesting. They've got an interesting little few weeks to figure it all out.
mm,
The group is there, the talent is there, I think, but it's not going to be the easiest thing to figure out.
mm. Cleary, 20 point 6 of 11 shooting. Max Jones, 17. Irvin, 15. They were 10 of 25 from three. Skylar White, 6 of 7 for three for 20 points. Robinson had 18 and Brenchley had 12. They were 13 of 40.
Yeah, I continue to appreciate Zach Irvin.
Mm,
Smart as heck. And I don't think any player in the history of British basketball has ever scored a high percentage of their points on the baseline.
mm,
Probably John McCord was close. John McCord used to run
yeah.
the baseline and make ridiculous kind of back layups underneath the rim and that type of thing. But even he had a 15-foot jump shot, which he kind of
Mm,
shoot as well. But Irvin's movement and cutting is, people talk about it as a lost art. It is. He moves without the ball so well. Um, but they might go as far as Manchester might just go as far as their three guards go because they brought another American guard off the bench, Jordan Johnson, different Jordan Johnson,
mm,
and they've got the other two guards. So, they're relatively inexperienced guards, and the guard plays generally where the games are won and lost in the clutch. So we'll see where they get to.
let's come to the Dandy Derby.
No,
Uh,
I don't want to talk about this game.
Caledonia 104, Newcastle 109 after overtime. Obviously, Eagles brought in Maceo Jack this week. Darius isn't fit following that injury at the end of last season, so he was out. Cole Long with 7 points. Newcastle early 9-3 lead, but Gladiators came back 16-16. I don't know how much of the game we want to get through
Not
before we.
really, not that much to be honest. It was basically there was 2 points in the game. I mean, firstly, talking about both the teams, the first time I've seen Caledonia's roster, I quite like it. Um, Holland is going to be key for them because Holland and Jimenez are really the only point guards. So Holland is going to have to, as time goes on, be a guy who can get them a bucket and get them into what they need to when they get into. Obviously, we know, right? They've signed a guy from German Pro A who came off the bench, the shooter, Rastrick. What was Matthew
Ragsdale.
Ragsdale? Sorry, who clearly knows how to score the ball. We know Spielman knows how to score the ball, albeit I found out today for the first time from the live
His name
stats.
is
His name is
Charles.
Charles.
Mm,
I'm sorry, Charles, you don't get to call yourself Jet if you're a
It's
Charles.
the thing is, it's
I'm
Jet
sorry.
with two T's. The live stats was wrong, so that looks to me like it's probably a middle name rather than a
Charles,
nickname.
I
You
think
wouldn't go with two T's if it was a nickname.
if I was sitting on half court on at the Telewest Arena like I was 20 years ago watching him play, I'd be shouting out Charles a lot. Put it that way. Um, but we know he can score. And and obviously Fraser can we know what Fraser Malcolm is. And then they've managed to sign a 6'10" guy
Mm,
who dominated this game when he came in off the bench. Um, and actually changed the way they played a little bit, but was so efficient you couldn't really argue about it, you
yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah.
And for the first three quarters, you would have thought that this is a team which is it's running its offense to perfection. It's getting touches. I mean, I looked at the stats after three quarters. They had 81 points. They were shooting like 64, 52, 70 something on percentages. Um, the shots they were getting were good shots. It was a well-designed offense. It looked like, they're screening away at the right time. And you were thinking, this is quite an offensively, powerful unit. Um, Defensively, they weren't great. In fact, neither team was great defensively. Um, but obviously, when you're draining threes and you're going up 15 and you're getting out in transition and your scorers are scoring, you don't really worry about that. The biggest point in the game though was 3 minutes to go in the third quarter, at which point Mark Stewart decided that none of his three centres were up to that game,
Mm,
and he went the age-old Newcastle way of going small.
mm,
And the rest of the way, I think he played basically the same six guys. He didn't play Smith, didn't play Reed, didn't play Canway. Um, Disappointed with Reed in this game because in the two preseason games he was very impressive. Very hard, very quick, up and down, bouncy attack. He was a bit cowed in this game. He was almost like he was in his own head, and he got dominated. And he didn't protect the rim the way he needs to. Um, so that's what you pay the coach for. The coach decides, okay, we got all of these guys, it's not working. I don't need any of them.
mm,
And he went and played with Anthony as the centre
mm.
and Cole Long as the four. And Anthony's the other guy I was talking about as being.
Oh, I thought you were going to go with Kevin Allen, actually. I thought that
No,
was the
actually
other
not
one.
Alan. And because Alan, within 5 minutes, I know what he is.
Mm,
He's a big body. He knows his game. Anybody smaller than him, he's going to back down. He's going to get offensive rebounds. He's going to be impactful. You're going to need a big body against him, basically. And Anthony's one of those weird players who intrigues me because he's massively undersized. A little bit like Alan Aikens was, you know. He played 39 minutes in this game. He didn't play a minute in the preseason.
mm,
Didn't play any of the games. He had his Peloton bike on the lowest, sitting too low or something in his knee. But he is one of those intriguing guys. I'm trying to think. I'm thinking maybe kind of a Dante Nicholas type guy
mm,
who hasn't really got a game to him. You don't really know exactly what he is. Yet at the end of the game, he's got like 20 points and 8 rebounds. You're thinking, how's that happened? And it's all kind of little flip shots, a little bit of Alan Akins last year, little flip shots, little. It doesn't look like he can shoot the ball for crap, to be honest. His
mm,
form doesn't look great. But suddenly we need an offensive rebound. He's scoring. He's doing the right things. So they went with him and Long as the 4-5. And basically, what that did was it allowed Newcastle to switch a lot of screens. It took away all the threes. So after three threes at the beginning of the fourth quarter, basically Caledonia couldn't score.
mm. So actually, before that, the
Sorry.
Eagles had scored seven in a row to make it 81-75, and then they got the three threes, Ragsdale, Holland, Spielman, in a minute to make it 90 to 77.
Yeah.
But then Jack with 5 points, 12-2 run, 92. It's actually bigger than that because Ward Hibbert banks in a three, so it's a 15-2 run. With 2 minutes to go, the scores are tied at 92-92.
Yeah, I mean, in the annals of the history of Scottish collapses against Newcastle, it was
Mm.
exceedingly familiar.
Yeah.
But to be fair, as ever, hide it, David, hide it.
Mm,
Um, no, to be fair, it was due to the personnel on the court. I
mm,
mean, basically, Stuart at the end was going offense defense with Clark and Taylor,
mm,
and then he had Ward Hibbert, who we know is a good defender, Jack, who was a pretty good pick up 2 minutes before the game started. I think,
Mm.
given what the other guy had shown in pre-season, I think to get Maceo Jack in 23 points in 28 minutes, he just looked bigger. You know, he just looked
Yeah,
big.
he looked like he'd been in the gym.
Looked like he'd been in the gym, and he missed all the foul shots he's going to miss this season.
Mm,
You
mm.
know, so to get him was a bonus. So then you end up with a basically guards at 6'6" and 6'5", Long is 6'8", and then Anthony is this kind of weird kind of 6'5", do it all type of guy. And that meant they could switch screens, they could take away the threes and just basically have a bit more space offensively to operate as well, which allowed them to get back in the game. And teams on you, so they haven't got pecking orders at the moment as to who they're going to go to in certain plays at certain times, and it became basically it was a toss-up game.
Well, let's just run through the plays. 1:45 to go. Alan Fowl going to the basket, goes 1 for 2, puts them up 93-92. Anthony misses the baby hook right to the rim. He misses the layup, but there's a hell ball on the rebound. So Gladiators
Let him play. Let him play. A strong
got
guy play. That's
possession.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Wright with a tough shot. He misses. Spielman this time with an offensive rebound, and he's fouled. He only makes 1 for 2 as well. 59 and a half seconds to go. It's 94-92 Caledonia. A really nice pass, I thought, from Anthony. 43 seconds to go. He got doubled, and he could have easily shot it, and he found Long underneath for
Yeah,
the
that's
dunk.
why I'm saying, because if you're 6'4" and you've got a game like his,
Mm,
to be a pro, you've got to have a lot of stuff going on,
mm.
a lot of stuff about you. So I'm really intrigued to see how he ends up guarded and how he ends up playing as the season goes on. But you're right, it was a nice pass, last minute pass and long cut.
94-94. Spielman then misses, and there's about a 5 or 6 second differential between shot and game clock. Um, Jack drives into the key. He's fouled with 7.4 seconds to go. Timeout before the shots, which at the time I was thinking, why would you call the timeout before the shots? Because you might want to
Icing.
advance the ball.
Yeah.
But icing a 93% free throw shooter, you think probably not the most effective tactic, but actually it was a very effective
A
tactic because he
93% free throw shooter who played 28 minutes, including about 16 of them consecutively in a game a day after getting without
mm,
preseason.
mm.
So it's all about legs.
So my stat is Maceo Jack had never missed more than 2 free throws in a game in British League before, and he'd only missed 2 in a game twice.
Wow.
Uh, he did go 0 for 2 on one trip against London on the 21st of October 22. So this is only the second time he'd gone to the free throw line and missed both free throws.
Wow. I mean, yeah, okay. That's, yeah.
So he misses both. Holland runs back, misses. Allen tried to push it back up, doesn't go. Gladiator screaming for a foul. I didn't really think it was a foul.
Well, Dan, there's a thing called basketball karma,
Mm, mm,
right? And if you go back, I'm probably too biased to offer an opinion on it. I did think Long kind of swipe, but I didn't really see much from Allen, which made me think that he was disgusted at the lack of a call, if you know what I mean.
yeah,
Um, Basketball karma, 20 years ago, Braehead Arena, right?
yeah. Here we go.
No, there's a link.
Yeah,
There's a
yeah,
link.
yeah,
Cup quarter final, Jerry Williams playing for Glasgow, and
yeah.
yeah, good team, TJ Walker for Eagles. 4 seconds to go, Eagles down by 2. TJ penetrates at the middle of Braehead Arena, drops in an 8-foot floater, tie game. Eagles press on the Eagles press on the inbounds. TJ steals the inbounds pass. It was like Havlicek steals the ball.
Yeah.
Two steps, 2 dribbles, layup, scores. Right. 5 minutes later, the Scottish table and a referee by the name of Robert Barnier,
Okay.
you
Good old
know,
Bob.
good old Bob, also known as with Rob Hickman as well, but Bob Barnier decided that was after the buzzer. It was still the greatest um, heist since William Wallace, raided Carlisle, basically, right? So 20 years on, who's reffing? Bob Barnier.
Bob Barney
Who's not making that call?
on the
Bob Barnier.
baseline.
Karma. Karma. It always comes. You might have to wait a
Yeah,
year, a week, 20 years. It
yeah,
came.
yeah,
Nobody else will remember, but I do, so I'm happy
yeah.
about it. But no, I mean, yeah, you tell me. You're more independent than me on that one.
I didn't. I don't think I would blow a whistle in that situation to basically win win or lose the game.
I think you're probably right on what I didn't. I was watching it with the volume down. I didn't
Mm.
immediately think that was a foul, but looking back, there's he's probably got. You'd probably say he's got to make that. He's made every other shot in the game.
Yeah, yeah,
He's
yeah,
got
yeah.
27 and 16. He's 2 feet from the basket. He's 6'10". You'd probably say he's probably got to make that one,
Mm.
whether he's fouled or not.
4 points from Jack made it 96-102. Alan cut it back to two. And then Taylor made it 100 to 105 with a minute to go. Alan in and out on a little toss, and then Marco Anthony on a turnaround basically sealed it 100 to 107 with 25 seconds to go.
Yeah, and Newcastle, that lineup, early on in the season, the more subs you make, the harder it is. You saw that with London.
Mm,
Yeah, but that lineup basically, with swapping in Taylor and Clark, basically played 15 minutes or 18, 20 minutes straight. So they got familiar with with each other. They got familiar defensively. They got the reps in offensively as a group. They're not looking at each other. And their pick and roll defense in the first 3 quarters with the bigs in the game was not good. There's times you didn't know if they were switching, if they were going under, whatever. It wasn't good. But it was simplified with probably the most cerebral defensive team in the game. And that helped them build that rhythm. And when they got, and I think Jack got the turnover, didn't he, in
mm,
overtime, whereby he intercepted the inbounds because they put pressure on, which isn't an easy thing to do in a 43 minutes in a 45-minute game. And once he got that one, you thought, they're going to Caledonia's going to struggle here.
mm,
I'm actually quite optimistic for Caledonia. I think I like the group. I like the team he has. I'm need to see a little bit more out of the point guard, a little bit like Bristol. Are they going to maybe be able to make all those shots all the time? Or are they going to make those shots on the road? But if you can bring on 2 guys off the bench like he's got there, who are productive and impactful, and it'll be interesting to see if Alan actually starts at some point. Um, then I like their group. Newcastle are a little bit obviously you're playing 3 centres. You got a fourth one injured. None of them are on the court at the end,
mm,
so that's a bit of a concern in relation because they're not going to have all those in relation to the roster makeup. If you can't get those guys on the court, and you can't really have that many of them, you might need somebody else to spell one of the wings. But obviously, a massive upgrade with Jack.
mm.
Jack really gives them a bit of BBL SLB legitimacy. I liked Long last year. I still think Long's a good Taylor to American kind of scoring kind of point guard. He does 4 things well and he takes a bad shot. Another thing well and another bad shot. And I think not sure that's and there's a couple of times in that I think with 3 minutes to go in the game, Mark pulled him out. Which isn't something you normally do. Put Clark in because I think he thinks Clark is running the offense better. Um, but Anthony really intrigues me as to where they are with him. They're going to need more. They're going to need more out of their centers. They can't be as beaten up as they were in that game in the long run. But overall, small ball early on, 5 guys playing together, playing hard. If you're a coach, you can't really ask so much more than that.
So Kevin Allen, 27 points, 16 rebounds, 12 of 20 shooting. Ethan Wright, 24, which is his highest score against an SLB team. He had 23 against Newcastle in the trophy last year, 27 against Falkirk, also in the
I mean,
trophy.
he's a real. He always, even at Leicester, he was a scorer, pure
Mm,
scorer. Not a shooter, a scorer. And one of the things early on in the game when Newcastle were a bit bigger was you were a bit worried that they didn't have enough quickness to stay in front of him. Tighty got to the rim far too often. And there wasn't a
10 of 17 shooting. He also got 8 rebounds. He has a touch of Rudy Fernandez sort of. How is he open on the baseline like that?
yeah.
How does he keep getting he ought not to happen because everybody knows he's going to do it.
Princeton boy, isn't he?
Mm, mm, mm.
Smart cookie.
Matthew Ragsdale, 15. Marco Anthony, 24 points, 8 rebounds, 10 of 15 shooting. Maceo Jack, 23 points, 4 of 8
From the
from
foul.
the foul line. Absolutely shocking.
Yeah, great guys. We'll sign this guy as a 93% foul shooter. Fantastic. Can't wait for him to come in. You're going to love playing with him. We'll give him the ball at the end of the game. You'll never miss.
Yeah. It is ironic that he's missed 4 and he's only had 2 games where he's missed 2.
Mm.
Plus 18 though.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying about Brett Reed. Brett Reed was a minus 15 on Mason Jack was a plus 18. So they're going small. it really just helped Newcastle win this game.
Rashawn Taylor, 19 points and 6 assists there, 27 points off turnovers, Newcastle.
Yeah, it was interesting because for the whole of the pre-season, I was looking at them thinking, I'm not quite sure if this team's going to. I hadn't seen Anthony play, obviously. I'm not quite sure if this team's going to score enough, but they're going to be pretty feisty, kind of defensively. And then the first three quarters, the defense really wasn't there.
Mm,
They were, not that the effort wasn't there, but they weren't on a string, and Caledonia basically picked them apart. Um, but I've got actually more hopes for the defense and their offense for Newcastle.
mm,
Um, Caledonia. I probably watched Newcastle more than I watched Caledonia in this game, to be honest. It's hard to focus on because
mm,
I'm a little bit more invested in Newcastle. I'll probably watch Caledonia a little bit more carefully next week, just in relation to it. But I mean, their offense was pretty for a lot of that game.
mm,
But why did it slow down? I think probably the time where all the ball movement ends and you need someone just to go get you a bucket,
mm,
and they didn't really have that, and they ended up basically focused on the mismatch inside for Allen, which was okay, but you keep going to that well eventually, that well's going to run dry. It's hard.
mm,
These
mm,
guys playing really hard. So, yeah, both teams pretty decent, I thought.
mm. I think you've thought that about all 8 teams, which bodes well
Yeah, I have
for the
actually. Now,
season.
obviously, sorry, it'll be crap. Oh, they won't. Sorry, guys. Haven't seen you play yet. No, I think there's definitely talent there, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
No,
yeah,
definitely a lot of talent there. It's encouraging to see Cleary, Bowman, Raffet, obviously Sandy. Um, Suleiman wasn't really that impactful, but clearly he's going to be a player. Those type of guys, um, who are options for FIBA windows.
mm, mm,
They are options. They have to be
mm.
in the league and playing, and hopefully starting to take ownership of some of that. Um, and more importantly, we beat the Jocks.
Indeed. So on that very non-partisan point, I think we'll call it a day. It's busy
Yeah,
week
nothing is
next
hidden,
week.
fellas. Sorry,
Yeah,
anybody watching this news,
yeah,
nothing is hidden.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's busy
Prejudices are
week.
worn straight across the forehead.
A busy week next week. It ratchets us up a lot more games. It's game Tuesday night, Dave. Don't forget.
Yeah, London, Cheshire. I'm actually quite
Yeah,
intrigued at that because
yeah.
that is London and Cheshire are the absolute opposites.
Mm,
London got all those guys and they're giant, and Cheshire are going to play. I think they're just going to buy into what they do and play really fast. I'm really
mm,
interested to see
mm,
how it works. I mean, that's it. London is, it's easy to root for London to lose, you
mm,
know, but they've got a rookie coach and they've got a ton of players. They had 11, did 11 play on Friday night,
mm.
and
Yeah, I think
they
so.
didn't have a Damu, they didn't have Mike Sell. Um, Ovi hardly played. These are really, really deep team. And they've got, five coaches, but he's still a new coach to the league.
Mm.
And now it's not got in the way the last couple of years with
He's a new coach. He's
new
been an
coach. Yeah, I
assistant
mean,
for the
he's
last
assistant
five
coach. Yeah,
years. Yeah.
so he's not got in the way with Bozic the last couple of years.
Mm.
Albeit there's times they've lost games in Glasgow that and that was Schmidt before that.
Oh, yeah, well, so.
Um, it's not got in the way. They've still managed to win, but it doesn't mean it's always going to be that way. And Bozic
Mm,
obviously was a lot more experienced as a head coach than
mm,
to bonuses. Um, so yeah, it's going to be a real job keeping that group together. I mean, I assume they'll be well enough paid whereby they won't be twisty.
mm,
But eventually, they don't have a Decker.
mm,
They don't have a Decker. They're built around a kind of a strength in depth, strength in numbers type of thing, from what I can see, and that can cause as many problems as it solves.
mm,
So obviously, I root for them in Europe, but I root for it to be interesting
mm.
in the SLB.
Yeah, yeah. Don't we all?
Mm.
Dave and I
We don't
will.
all. I think there's a guy there's 12 people in the board who would root for the games not to being played. They're
Yeah,
there, and sorry, we should just say. I mean, obviously, the postscript to all of this is that we haven't had our normal referees.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um, Outside of one pretty remarkable unsportsmanlike foul call in Glasgow today.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
we're pretty remote. It wasn't the last man, it wasn't on sports night, apart from that.
Yeah,
But outside of that, I don't think it's really been noticed that much.
no,
I mean, generally the first few weeks of the season is all about the teams figuring themselves out, so they're less fussed about the refs anyway.
yeah,
Um, but I think I don't think it's sustainable to have a 68-year-old man refereeing a game
yeah, yeah.
in Bristol and then
I
refereeing a
think
game
he's
in Glasgow.
67, isn't he?
67, whatever.
Yeah,
That's not saying he can't do it,
yeah,
but I think we need a resolution to that quickly.
yeah, yeah, we do.
I'm a little bit lost on the real ramifications of refereeing in a quote marks unlicensed league. Everything else about this league is licensed. I just don't get
Yeah,
it, to be honest.
yeah, yeah,
And and if it seems to me like one of those Trump threats, I'll put a tariff on you in 2 weeks or something, or we'll not let you do this in 2 weeks if you're refereeing on.
yeah,
That's what FIBA need to sort out. We do need some of those guys back. Not well, yeah, we need all of them back.
yeah,
We need to have the best. Um, but the longer it goes without them refereeing, the bigger the risk that people don't really care.
yeah, yeah,
You know, so at the moment it's quite clear that all our kind of main group, they must have taken a collective decision. It's not been announced,
yeah,
but none of the Group A or the main group refs, the main BBL refs from SLB refs from last year have been refereeing. So it
mm,
must be a collective decision. Um, but I just hope we're not cutting off their nose to spite their face.
mm,
I do because for me, the games are the same, the um, the gyms are the same, the players are similar, the crowds are the same. If it's just because, you've got some egotist in London saying, oh, we're not going to give you a letter with a few names behind you in relation to this league when we've actually already agreed in principle that we think it's appropriate that you recognise, then just maybe I'm being very overly simplistic.
mm,
If I was a ref, I would say stuff it. I'm going to go and ref. That's
mm.
what I would do. But then again, I don't know enough about it to
No,
make
no,
ramifications of the decision.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
So,
perhaps the SLB needs to, and obviously we have to remember that. Sorry, Dan, I know we've tried to finish this 3 times now, but we also have to remember that the SLB didn't cover themselves in glory with the refs last year.
no, no,
In
no.
particular, the episode that happened. So there's probably a little bit of genuine and probably understandable resentment
Mm,
about that and why should we help them out given what happened last year. And so it's pretty disappointing to me, and this is where I don't blame the BBF, that there hasn't been a degree of rapprochement between the SLB and the referees whereby they've managed to make it work.
mm,
I think that kind of is a plague on everybody's house, really.
mm, mm. Lovely. We'll end on a plague.
Who's on a plague? And next week we'll be talking about 1665 in the BBL, when the greatest plague of all came to town.
Oh dear, we're going for a lie down because it's been a long time and we've had no pre-season. We've just come at this.
Yeah,
We're,
Maceo
we're
Jack was
like
like,
Maceo Jack. We just rocked up and started shooting. But there you go. So have a good week, everybody. We'll be back. I think I'm in Cheshire next week, so it's probably Monday night. But we'll be back at some point. See you then. Goodbye.
Hi guys.